New to me story, new to me author, recommended by our patron of the month.
Star! Thank you for this one. Small Monsters by E. Lily Yu.
She's always good about picking good stories. Now this one, interesting enough, did you see that it came with like this trigger warning thing in the beginning, which I didn't know this, but this actually like, some people want it, right? Because they want to know what they're getting into. Certain things they just don't want to read about. But did you know that like trigger warnings actually like, just the fact that they're there trigger people? Like it's the craziest thing.
You get triggered by a trigger? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if that's your take, then this is not the story for you, because this story was designed, I think, to help people overcome maybe traumatic experiences in a softer way, where it is not literally people, but representations of people in these monsters, which I think are supposed to illustrate emotions of some type.
My experience when I first started this off, right? So after a week of labor, this mom has this baby monster and is hungry. So she nibbles, takes bites out of the monster. I didn't take notes on where she bit or what she bit off. I didn't know if there's supposed to be symbols in there. I just kind of read the story. But in the opening paragraphs, there's two words here. There's call, and I didn't look up how to pronounce it. I had to look up what the word was, but like Icor, I didn't know what these words were. And I was like, oh crap, is this going to be a really difficult story to read?
Yeah, the Icor isn't that like the kind of like a bodily fluid substance?
Yeah, pretty much. And what's weird is the narration describes the mom as, I think, it at this point in time. It's not she, it's not the mother. Like there's immediate, like I assume, attempts to distance yourself from this parent that is abusing a child, right? Because the child eventually builds up the strength. It's like, why are you doing this? And the mother's like, well, you're my child. I'm allowed to. I own you in a sense, right? Like this expectation of privilege of, well, the privilege isn't the right word, but like she is allowed to do it because it's her right, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of felt very real to when you're a little kid and your parent says something and you get to that point where you have a thought of your own. You're not just emulating what your parents are doing or whoever is watching you or daycare or your friends. And you have your first own thought. And the first question that comes to mind is, why? And I remember that as a little kid. And my mom would sometimes try to answer me, but it got to the point where, and I feel like kind of like in this story, is because I said so. That's the old catchphrase, right? When your parents don't know, or they are too tired to explain, or they don't have a good answer, or they don't want to answer you right then, it's because I'm the mother, or I'm your parent.
Oh, that's actually a really interesting point, because so most viewers out there know I have a son. He's 7 years old right now. And you'll hear little snippets about him and growing up and my struggles as a parent through this. And one of the things that I was worried about is the backtalk. You know what I mean? Like the questioning is real, and it's okay to question. You don't want to shut down questioning. But I was reading this article about a parenting expert, like whatever that means. And one of the things that they said is they talk about that because I said so, that there are times to use that because you don't want to, their defense was you don't want to train the kid to challenge your authority in a sense, in some regard. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. That's what this person was saying. But you bring up an excellent point here, because that is, in this specific instance, it's training the child of, this is going to be your life. You're not allowed to question it.
Yeah, and I think that is a detriment to a child, right? I mean, you want a questioning child. You want somebody that's a critical thinker. And I guess there is that fine line of pushing back against the man, pushing back against, society or the norms or whatever. Because for a family to work together, they need to kind of see eye to eye, because if you aren't, believing the same beliefs, or if you don't have, the same structure, you're not going down the same path, you might not be friends, you may be family, but you're not going to be working together, you're not going to be getting along, and there's going to be a struggle. And I think that's what the small monster here is starting to see is, I'm not on the same page with my parental unit here, and I don't like this. And then we see the story kind of take that turn of what happens when children start questioning their parents, going out on their own path, and they start running into these things my parents didn't teach me about because maybe they were trying to shelter me so much.
Yeah. Well, and you see coping, right? You see the little monster do that because the baby brother is born. And he learns to, okay, when my parent comes home, I have to be the farthest from the door because the first child that they see is going to be the one that they abuse, basically. So you see those coping mechanisms of, I can't change that system, so this is how I lessen my own pain in life.
I thought that was very interesting because that was one of the parts of the story that I was confused on because I felt like it wasn't true to kind of what happens in real life. I feel like, and I know maybe this sounds terrible, but I think parents sometimes, when there are multiple siblings, they try not to play favorites, but again, you're just going to have a different relationship, based on maybe the age, father, son, mother, daughter, father, daughter, whatever it may be, or it's just interest as a whole. I felt like that was kind of maybe in the story a poor way of saying how maybe a child would be chosen to be the one to be abused. Because I feel like in real instances, a parent always will pick a favorite and one that they're going to, pick on, so to speak, for, not trying to get too graphic here because the story does a good enough job of that. But I was kind of struggle with the story of distance is how it's chosen. I don't really feel is the proper way of maybe how that is replicated in real life.
Well, you said the word always. That's a very strong way of putting it. I don't know. There could be situations. I don't want to assume for everyone, but let's put it this way. We talk about it as parent-child. We have no ambiguity as to what this story is about.
Right.
Like
right.
when we say something's a metaphor, it's like you have something that's a stand-in to represent something else, right? And sometimes it can mean multiple things. And there's also the word allegory, where you literally, like, it's a very concrete way of representing and reinterpreting something by using something totally different. And it's just like meant to be a one-to-one relationship as opposed to a metaphor, which can be more loose, right? What is this story? Because you have a parent abusing a child, but it's just a monster instead, right? It's neither a stand-in. It's neither meant to be representative of something else. I don't know. Maybe you have something there because you said something about the types of monsters or colors earlier, but you made this decision, I think, when you put it best earlier, that this is meant to be a story that I think is a tool for people to understand and maybe interpret this situation. Particularly if you've gone through this probably is something that could be very emotionally, you could respond to it, I guess I would say. But it's clear that she chose very few differences, but it's like the fantasy just gives you just enough of a separation, perhaps, to make it more okay to talk about.
Yeah, I like what you brought up there, the separation, because for me, the fantasy was, it's a monster, so it's okay. And I guess as a reader, does that lessen my feelings towards it? Because monsters are typically in our society seen as bad or evil, right? But this monster is being picked on, so you start to have some empathy for the monster, or maybe even sympathize with it because you've been in that situation yourself. And I guess I took that as how does one deal with abuse in a family? How does one cope with that? Do they cope with that? It is the only solution truly to run away, because the small monster doesn't stand up to the parent. They run away ultimately in the story with some misleading, I guess. Yeah, how did you take that part of the story when the monster finally kind of, quote, got up the courage to leave?
You know what? It's we throw out these terms very quickly, you and I, of abuse. When a child is in this situation, sometimes their interface with the world is just their parent. And their parent, as we talked about, is gaslighting. It's leading them down like this path of this is just what life is. And this child just says, I don't like it. Like, they don't know the word abuse. They don't know that it's necessarily wrong potentially. So what's interesting, to your point about the monster that takes it away, is just like, well, I'll only nibble on you once a month as opposed to once a week or whatever the numbers was. It was I'm still going to abuse you, but it'll be less. It's less painful.
Yeah.
So wouldn't this child naturally be like, oh, it's less painful. He does less things I like. Let's go do that. Like, oh, you have ice cream. Like, it's so hard, I think, that we can so easily assume and pass judgment on the decision processes of children, but also keep in mind that they have such limited life experience that they sometimes lack that gauge of acceptable behavior and what they can tolerate and can.
Ooh, tolerate, good word. I thought about it as the story was kind of progressing is, okay, if this is a metaphor for a child that is in a terrible situation, and then it's presented with, I don't want to call it an opportunity, but for a lack of better words, an opportunity to get out of this bad situation, to get into a less terrible situation. Do they have the wherewithal? Do they have, the ability to even make a complex decision like that? Or is somebody else, an outside factor, in this case, the third monster, or whatever, it was like a fox or something like that, that was manipulating them? So if this is real life, and is this the DCF? Is this child services? Is this a foster care system of some sort, or like a halfway house or something like that, where it's still kind of a terrible situation because you're not with like your loving parent that you were supposed to have, but now you're in this other situation. It's very complex.
Okay, you had a lot more parallels with real life there. Like I hadn't really considered like foster care or things like that. The fantasy brought me far enough away that from a world building perspective that this was a very dog eat dog world to me. And I couldn't help but think about, have you ever heard of the Aesop's Fables, the Scorpion and the Frog?
Oh yeah, I got that over on the bookshelf actually. Yeah.
So the what is it? The scorpion wants to cross the river. Yep. And he's like, Frog, take me across. Frog's like, no, like you'll sting me and we'll both drown and die. Yeah. And he's like, no, I won't. So the frog agrees to take him across, back belly, whatever, across the river.
Halfway.
Scorpion stings him. Yeah. Scorpion stings him anyways. And the frog's like, what are you doing? We're both going to die now. And the scorpion's like, it's my nature.
Nature. Yeah. I love that story.
You'll notice like one of the monsters kind of said that too. Like, this is my nature. And, what do we take from that Aesop's Fables? Because there's always a couple different angles. There's a question about personal responsibility, about what risk level you're trying to take on. There's also a question about how your naivety, right? Like, can you really trust the nature of others? Like if there's a chance someone can take advantage of you, they probably will. And in this world, being so dog eat dog, a violent world, we see how that in the naivete of someone can be easily taken advantage of.
Yeah, I guess that's the other crux that I took from it, is that because I looked at it kind of so literal in the sense of this being the real world, is that's the thing. A child shouldn't have to question a parent. They should be able to trust them 100% to love you and take care of you and provide you with everything you need to be successful, or move on with your life and stuff, set you up for success, right? I mean, why else would you have a child if this isn't the thing or the person, the whatever that you're going to love the most out of the whole world? Why would you set someone up for failure like that, of like, I'm going to have this kid, but it's going to be for my own personal gain?
So we have the parent side of things. We have the stranger, naivety, nature versus nurture, right?
Right.
We have the little monster starting to fight off. Was it the rat-faced one or something like that? We see it to start to stand for itself, to realize that it's that coming of age of starting to take on responsibilities is kind of how I took it. Then we meet the clawed monster, right? What do you think that was?
I think that was society. I think that was all of the things that are just going to come beat you down, that you have to fight back.
The clawed monster? The one that put jewels and stuff on his back?
Oh. So I think that was okay, yes, I'm sorry. So the clawed monster is the friend through it all, right? The one that's going to help you through everything. So I was like, oh, finally they got a friend. And, it's kind of that, idea of, would you rather have 1,000 okay friends or one best friend, and you only need that one best friend and that's it, and you'll be fine. And so I felt like, I feel like Small Monster finally got just the one thing they needed, that support, and all you needed from one person, and you can be fine. You don't need, 1,000 Facebook friends. You just need one real friend.
And you saw how they built each other up, right? By putting and gathering jewels together, going on adventures. Side quest. I thought there was going to be a different commentary here on that sinking ship when the people and like the sheep, who are adorable as hell, they just let them drown, but they got the gold coins. So it didn't go where I thought it was going to go, but they did use, they did go on an adventure and they did build up their armor. It's kind of like the, iron sharpens iron. Yeah, something along those lines. It's like friendships allow you to build yourself, to build an armor, and to defend yourself against nature, against the naivety, against those that would take advantage of you, is kind of how I took it.
Yeah, or build each other up, right? I mean, we're social creatures, and with that friend, you don't have to worry about it. And I've told my wife this before. She has given me the most confidence in the world because, she's so smart, she's so beautiful, she's all these things, and through her, I know I can do everything because she is that friend that allows to lift me up. And same with you. I've realized, how, our friendship has lifted me up intellectually and challenged me and made me think and, made me read more and question things. And that, I think that's in the story, is the representation of that's what a friend is going to do, is allow you to become your best self. And it doesn't have to be a parent or family. You can choose who your family is or choose who your friend is. And that's what I think is wonderful about the story that the small monster did.
Let me just read a couple of quotes from the Claude monster. I want to get your thoughts on this. He says lines such as, "Anyone can be improved. Art is all. Nothing lasts." And he talks a lot about how, art is self-expression and what is trauma, right? Is it something that we go through for the purpose of creating better art? How did you take some of these statements in the story?
I felt like Claude Monster was telling Small Monster that this is going to make you a better person. You're going to come out stronger in the end. I guess it's that old adage that, whatever doesn't, kills you makes you stronger. And Little Monster survived all these things from their parent and made them maybe a little bit jaded on life and society, but through the end, I think became a better person. I mean, even though it's a monster, became a better monster that wasn't and didn't replicate what the parent had done, right? They saw that this was wrong and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be better than my parent. And I think that's the hope for many parents, right? Is that your children become better than you or are better off than you, have a better life than you.
Well, I think we see the little monster go the opposite way from the bat. Like he fought his mom, he fought the three clawed, he fought all of the monsters of his past, right? And
everything the world can throw at him.
And he tries to swim away from them. He tries to avoid conflict. He doesn't fall down the same violent tendencies that the other people in this world do. And so ultimately they kind of get to that really, I thought was a beautiful ending with the islands, how an island kind of like stops all that wave lapping. It's that idea that you take life one step at a time and you're not worried about the tumultuous waves of the sea. And each time you build that island, that creates that calm in between steps. And you realize you can take life on through the calm of single steps as opposed to, the tumultuous looking out at the big sea. I thought it was a good ending.
Oh, see, you're always such the optimist. That's why I love you. So I took it as a very downer ending, that Small Monster realized that it couldn't rely on anybody else in this world and that isolated itself on this lone island and started built a barrier around itself to protect itself from the outside world so that it didn't have to suffer anymore. I took it totally different.
Dude, you nailed it though, that I truly am the total optimist and you really are the pessimist. That's very true to our nature, but I totally see that. I get it.
Yeah, and I see yours as well. I love that. So I love the open interpretation. So thank you again for the suggestion, Star. This was a fun read and a good talk.
Appreciate it. And to my friend that helps sharpen my own tin, to many more days of spending time together and sharpening and building each other's armor. Cheers, friend.
Cheers.